we've seen the best, now here's the rest. Here is my collection of the Legend Creations, aka HC Toys 1/6 scale figures that I have amassed to date. We're just going to go through the whole lot of them. I'm going to show them one by one, and I'm going to show you what sort of modifications I've done, if any, to the figures to try and improve them and bring them up to a reasonable level of quality that I would like to have in my collection. Here we go. Okay, the first figure we're going to take a look at is the HC Toys Thanos. I bought this guy because I wanted to put him on a throne, and it looked okay for my purposes. He actually has the sitting down loincloth piece actually on him already, so he was perfect for a sitting down position. The Guardians of the Galaxy version was way too expensive, and it was really underscaled anyway, so this was going to be an out of scale purchase to begin with. So when I bought this guy, I modified certain things about him. I modified the helmet. Okay, when I first got him, he looked okay. He was a bit plastic fantastic, and the paint application was subpar, especially around the helmet. There was bleed off of the gold everywhere, and I didn't really like it. So I went in and then I sort of cleaned up all the gold pieces, and then I actually weathered it a little bit more. So I cleaned up the helmet a little bit, I weathered it a little bit more, just so there wasn't such a horrible bleed off. I should have actually gone in and repainted the face as well, but at the time I didn't really have the time to do so. And then I actually went in and repainted most of the armor. Now I didn't do a massive paint job on it. I started going in and dry brushing gold pieces. These shoulder pauldrons were very plastic, and they were almost transparent how cheap the plastic was. So I went in and repainted the shoulder pauldrons. And then I actually went in and painted some rose gold around the edges, gave him some different colours, just so when you look at the details, you can see in the edges, it's a little bit darker around there. There was a little bit more weathering. I took some of the weathering off in certain parts. I highlighted these bits here at the back. There was just a lot of like lightly dry brushing pieces everywhere and making just different bits of the metal pop. Here you can see these are painted a different colour to the rest of the armour, and that was deliberate by me to try and highlight some of the extra features on him and get those details out. I also repainted the gauntlet simply by painting it just as many different kinds of metal colour I could, and just getting it sort of patchy and looking like old and worn and battered. The actual hard part for this guy was actually making the throne. And that was a bit of a pain in the butt, but I do have a video on the channel showing you my process and how I made that throne. And now he sits on that throne pretty confidently on a top shelf, and he doesn't look too bad. But yeah, this out of the box, it was, you know, really shoddy. So I had to do some work to get it up to a standard where I didn't feel embarrassed to have it in the collection. And pretty much that's it for Thanos. Okay, moving on to the next figure. Okay, next up we're going to look at the Bucky Barnes figure. This was a lot of work for what essentially was a basic okay 1/6 scale figure in the end. This was a very early one from sort of HC Toys Legend Creations, sort of KO, and it showed. There was some really bad recasting going on. It was horrible. The head sculpt was atrocious. This is not it. This is a third-party head sculpt I got. The clothing is ill-fitted. It still is, even now. You can see that. The arm was probably its best feature. The chrome was actually very nice and chrome. It wasn't dull like I expected it to be. The hands were of an acceptable level, but not amazing. The gun was the second best feature, I would say. So I managed to dry brush some gunmetal into it, weather it up a little bit, and now it looks okay in his hand. I also weathered the clothing, and I also weathered the boots. But this required a body swap. It also required the arms to be swapped out because I needed that arm specifically, but I also needed the slightly bulkier right arm as well because the body I'd chosen had skinny arms. And I've weathered the trousers. These aren't even remotely close to the original Hot Toys version of the trousers. These are just some basic common combat trousers. And then we can see the boots have been recast. and they even have the Hot Toys logo on the bottom, which suggested to me that maybe these boots were in actual fact factory defects that were left in a bargain bin somewhere, and that's partly the reason I think these figures end up appearing everywhere, because the factories have a load of spare parts that didn't work for, you know, whatever reason, and then they managed to hodgepodge a figure together from those parts and then recasting other bits. But yeah, details wise he was okay. He's not great, even now he's still not amazing, and yeah, he stays on the top shelf out of highlight, because if I see him too much I'll probably get sick of it. Overall, the amount of modding you need to do, the amount, you know, you have to buy a new head sculpt and whatnot, a new body, it just isn't worth it. So yeah, I was interested to get it for the channel, I reviewed it for the channel, I modified it for the channel, but now it's, you know, it's surplus to requirements. It's not as good as my original mod that I did with original Hot Toys pieces. So yeah, he's one of my special secret shames in the collection. Okay, next up in the collection, we're going to show you the HC Toys Ghost Rider, which is basically a KO of the Hot Toys Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ghost Rider. This was actually one of their better attempts at actually recreating a Hot Toys figure, mostly because there wasn't anything there that challenged them too much. A lot of the stuff was simple recasting. I have a funny feeling they actually repurposed some old factory defect shoes. There was just a pair of jeans, a leather jacket, and the head sculpt. However, it does lose a lot of the quality of the Hot Toy. The paint application on the skull is not that good. You can actually see there is some misshaping around the teeth there. It should close quite confidently on its own, but once you close it up you can still see the gap. They did put the light up feature in there, which was really impressive as far as I'm concerned. But the translucent fire, it loses some of the detail in that. I think there was more colour in the Hot Toys version. This almost seems like a straight orange. But at least the flames come down across the skull. And I put a clear matte coating around the skull so it didn't shine up as much, because unfortunately it did look very plastic and toy-like when I first got it. And just quickly, here is the light up feature with the lights all turned off. I'm trying to show it, but it is daylight outside and some of the daylight is streaming through the blinds, so apologies for that. But you can see it does light up pretty nice. And I also repainted the neck area here with a little bit more red to try and hide that neck piece so that it does look a little better. I really weathered up the jacket. This stitching around here is all wrong. It's a lot better on the Hot Toy version. But the stitching around the back of the jacket and everything isn't too bad. I think I did a body swap on this as well. I also weathered the jeans a lot more and the shoes. But you can see this is more than likely a recast, because it actually has a Hot Toys logo on the bottom of the shoes. I don't think they'd bother doing that if that wasn't already on the shoes to begin with. Maybe from the factory, like I said, defects in a bargain bin somewhere, they've picked them up and they've tried to recreate this Ghost Rider. And he's not that bad. Once you do a little bit of work on him, put some weathering on him, put a matte coat on the skull, it's a fairly simple, easily moddable figure that can look okay in the collection once you do those mods. And you can see he also comes with a lot of the fire translucent effects that can go around his feet. However, again, they are a little bit monotone in their colour. They probably should have a little bit more clear and a little bit more red here and there, but they're pretty much a solid orange, and there is some paint splodging around here where you can see the clear orange has been painted on and it's sort of clumped together in certain areas. So it's not amazing, but from a normal sort of eye distance, it doesn't look too bad. So yeah, this is one of their better ones. And here's another recent one that's come into the collection, Racing Suit Tony Stark. This is pretty much a rip-off of the DJ Customs set. And what I think probably happened is at some point they've managed to get hold of a load of factory defect suits, and then they've just ripped off a few extra pieces here and there from the DJ Customs just to try and make one figure. And they've recast this head sculpt from the Mark 50. There is a distinct lack of detail in there. It doesn't look great. The suit is okay, but that zip is very garish, and the S, T and A are way over to the side here. They should be more in the center so that A comes across the zip. I'm not surprised that that's not accurate. Then the print on here is okay. The stitching around here is not too bad, and the boots are lacking a little bit of detail. They're quite basic. and the hands can vary in size depending on which one they did and how many times they recast it. The sunglasses are okay, they're a little bit frosty on the lens. This isn't one I needed in the collection, the only reason I got it was for the review. And now that the review is over and people have seen it and they can make their own choices, I'm probably going to get rid of him. I don't really need him in the collection. I've got a Super Duck racing suit Tony Stark figure that I kit bashed many years ago, and I'm still very happy with it. So other than the review, he's surplus to requirement now, and he is pretty much unmodified in any way. I don't really need to at the moment, but hopefully if I do get a good idea to modify him, he could stay in the collection, but at the moment I'm looking to move him on. Okay, and next up we've got the HC Toys Iron Patriot figure. Now this was one that I got, and the Iron Men that they do are very bad, with lots of recast pieces and slight bits being undersized. The proportions don't work as well as I think they should, especially around here. The legs are really thick, and then the sort of pants area has shrunken down and is a little tight. So because I wasn't going to keep it in the collection as is, I decided I was going to modify it and make it into something else. So I repainted it into an Iron Captain figure, and I repainted the torso here for 3 stripes. I then repainted round the back with another 3 stripes so that they're vertical rather than horizontal. And then I did some sort of like weathering and sort of like chips and paint chipping around the edges to make him look more battle damaged, especially around the edges of the kneecaps and feet and things like that. I also cleaned up the silvers around the edges here that did not look very good. They were bleeding off everywhere. I tightened up the joints by using super glue and just keeping it moving until the super glue dried, just so that there was some sort of friction, so that when I actually posed the arm it didn't just flop down to the side. This is a die cast shield that I got online, and I weathered it and took some paint chips out of it to make it look more battle damaged. And because I got 2 of these, one got sent to me accidentally, I put both shoulder cannons on the back, so he's got that sort of wolf predator look about him, like he's more armoured up. And then I modified a third-party head sculpt, and I managed to squeeze it into one of the helmets, and I put that on the body. He does have light up features. Yep, the arc reactor still lights up. I can light this up as well, I think. Let's see if it works. Yep, the light up features still work, and now that he's in the collection like this, I kind of like him like a variant, like a concept art, an oddity, and I don't hate it now, you know. That's what's important to me. When I look at my collection, I'm kind of proud that I managed to make an Iron Captain figure. Could it be better? Yeah, but I'm not a professional customizer, so I just do the best I can with the skills and the equipment that I've got. So yeah, now that he's been modified, I'm not so embarrassed to have him in the collection. He still stays on the top shelf, but yeah, now he can definitely stay in the collection, but I would not have kept him in the collection on display in the original stock format that he came in. Okay, next up in the collection we can see I've got the 20 Joker, I think they called him. I think they were supposed to say 2.0, but ended up calling him the HC Toys 20 Joker, and it's blatantly a rip-off of the DX11. I concentrated most of the modifications in the head sculpt. I fixed the eyes, I fixed the hair, and I also fixed some of the paint applications on the face. The rest of the figure, the majority of it, is pretty stock, to be honest, so I'm surprised he's able to sit there as well as he is. But this is actually the Hot Toys table, but all the accessories I believe are the KO versions, which are actually really good, and they look a heck of a lot like the original DX11 versions. This is one of the better KOs they did. It's still not great. Like I said, if you're going to get it, you're probably going to need to modify the heck out of it, and the chances are you're going to get rid of the coat, because the coat just really is too big for the body. However, as a stock figure, it is wholly underwhelming. So that's what I would say with most of these HC figures. You're going to have to do some work on them to bring them up to a quality that you actually think is reasonable. I tend to quite relish the challenge of getting one of these figures and trying to do simple things to them to try and bring them up and make them look better. I just count it as part of the hobby. And when I got this guy, I relished the challenge. And once I did all the mods and everything that I wanted to do to him, he looks okay. And I don't really actually mind putting him in the display either. I think he looks pretty good now. Not perfect, but good. Okay, let's just quickly zoom in at the end here and have a look at the head sculpt. You can see what I've done. The eyes are straight now. The hair is a lot less swampy. I've given him a lighter colour. I actually like the brightness of the green now. I think it makes him look a bit more pop arty. I didn't weather any of the clothing. I didn't feel the need to. He's sitting behind a desk, so he's not going to get seen that much via the clothing. But if you do get him and you want him standing up, you might want to weather the trousers a little bit, weather the waistcoat and that. Coming around the back, you can see I've actually modified the eyes so that they can move now. However, I'm not going to move them right now because you can see me doing that in the actual modifying video that I did. Go back on the channel and have a look. And honestly, I'm not embarrassed to have this in the collection anymore. I quite enjoyed the process of upgrading it and trying to make it look better. And now that I've got it to a place where I'm happy, I think he actually looks pretty good on the shelf in certain poses. Especially sitting down like this, it works really well. Okay, next up is the HC Toys Hellboy, which is just a straight up clone of the Hot Toy. Now, when you get this guy, he's got this sort of weird, sort of shiny and matte silicone body over the top of the body. It's just a stock body, and then they just stuck some silicone over the top, and it's quite a thin silicone as well. So there are some gaps in it, and it feels quite hollow in certain areas. Now, what I decided to do was put a vest on him to cover up most of that. I then sprayed the head sculpt and the hands matte so that they don't shine up and be so glossy, so they don't look as plastic fantastic as it did when it came out of the box. I've also weathered the trousers a little bit, I've weathered the boots, I've also weathered this coat a lot. There's a lot of brown dirt around the edges and mucked up just because it comes pretty clean out of the box. But I've also weathered the weaponry so that it's sort of dry brushed and looks a lot more worn and old. Same with the gun. Just here I've weathered the tips here like it's been used quite a lot. Weathered this part here. And then we come around the back and we can see the weathering goes all the way around the edges here. Pretty much every edge of the coat looks like it's been dirtied up and it's worn. Especially around the pockets where his hands are going in and out of all the time. They've been worn and dirtied up a lot more. And honestly, I'm quite proud to have this in the collection now. It looks okay. This is probably one of the best ones they did. Now, I covered up the body simply because I didn't like the way it looked. It looked cheap. The details in it were really soft, and the silicone was sort of patchy in places where it was shiny in one bit, matte in another. It just didn't look right to me. Maybe other people got better quality version, but I didn't. And I decided to cover that up with a vest, and I'm really happy I did, because now he looks pretty cool. Now you have to have the coat on because that neck can look a little high going up there. So I put the coat on and then I bring this in, and that kind of hides the neck a little bit more. He's actually one of my favourites in the collection when it comes to KOs. It was actually scary how well they did this one. But obviously the details in the head sculpt are soft. However, because he is red skinned and not flesh toned, it doesn't look too bad. It's the same with Hot Toys. Whenever you get a figure that is not flesh coloured, like Yondu, Gamora and people like that, they normally nail the head sculpts much easier because the colour of the skin is something that's very important, and you can't really replicate human skin as effectively as you can all these sort of alien coloured skins and red skins and blue skins and all that type of stuff, because we have the uncanny valley eye, and when we spot something that isn't quite right, especially with flesh, we know it's wrong. It signals in our brain. They call it the uncanny valley. It's a lot when we see like CGI movies, and the CGI films have like CGI characters in. If it's a human character but they're fully CGI, you can spot it straight away, and it can be really jarring and actually take you out of the film rather than keep you in it. And partly that's why I think this guy works so well. No flesh tone, so he gets away with a lot more. Okay, here's the newest HC Toys figure in my collection, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. It's a KO of the Toys era figure, not a Hot Toy. However, it does have some redeeming qualities. Not a lot, but a few. And one of the redeeming qualities is that the shirt and the waistcoat aren't too bad. And if you were to say put this mask on and then hide the sort of really soft details of the head sculpt, also swap the hands out for, you know, basic normal hands rather than the horrible gloved flesh painted hands they gave him, he doesn't look too bad. Also, take the jacket off. It's far too big and baggy and it just doesn't work. One of the things I failed to mention in the review video, and the only reason I failed to review it was because time was running out, and I just felt I needed to get the video out there, was the stand. It's usual, it's got that sort of sticker that the original Toy Zero version came with. It's quite nice. The resolution isn't too bad. It's a lot better than the Tony Stark stand I just reviewed. Again, it's got the Legend Creations logo on the bottom, just in case someone tries to rip them off. Copyright. They can't have it so that their stuff gets ripped off. God forbid. And then it's got quite a nice text on this bottom here. It just says the Joker, and it's pretty straight. It's sort of silvery and reflective. It's not too bad. However, it is a waist grabber rather than a crotch grabber, and I hate that. I much prefer the crotch grabbers, if I'm honest. But other than that, yeah, he's okay. But yeah, this shouldn't be your definitive Joaquin Phoenix Joker in the collection. Go out and buy the Toy Zero original. This could be good for customs and mods. I haven't done much modding to it. Just swapped the hands out, taken the jacket off, and covered the face up. Not really a mod. Just a posing preference, to be honest. But yeah, go back and just check out my review of this figure if you're interested in having a look at it and seeing exactly what it does right and what it does wrong. Okay, and I wasn't lying when I said that the Iron Man that HC Toys produce are shite. They really are bad. I mean, when I opened this Mark 6 out of the box, it fell apart, bits were falling out all over the place, and I didn't know what to do. I felt like I'd completely wasted my money. But then I came up with the idea of making this sort of repair gantry, and then I took it more apart, in fact, broke some bits off, used wires and cables, and I used 2 KO stands here to make the top and the bottom. I used some sort of metal mesh to go across the top here and go across the bottom. I used this sort of toolbox with all spanners and stuff in on there to make it look like it's a work in progress. I made this little box that I resprayed. It's sort of like a styrene sheets that I sort of cut up and stuck together to make this box, and then I painted it with the black squares. There usually should be like a Stark Industry logos down the bottom left hand corner here. However, I didn't really have the decals to do it. There is an actual sort of full light up setup in this guy. Voila, and here he is all fully light up. I put LEDs up in the top here. The battery compartment is down here, so I fed the wires through that rod at the back. The lights are getting a bit dull in the eyes now. I'll have to redo that. But there was a hell of a lot of modifying on this just to get it to a reasonable place. I even made look sort of like a styrene arm with mechanical bits inside and that. There was a video on the channel about what I actually did, but in all honesty, I managed to put lipstick on a pig. And me personally, if you can avoid buying the HC Toys Iron Man figures, do so, because they're not very good. And that is my Mark 6 gantry that I custom built mostly with the HC Toys Iron Man Mark 6 figure. Okay, out of all the Legend Creation figures I have bought and reviewed for the channel, these 3 are my personal favourites, and the reason being is that I think they work the best. The modifications are fairly simple. It's not too hard to do, except for the head on this guy. That was a little bit more tricky, but I enjoyed the process. I actually relished the challenge, and I really enjoyed doing it. But also, I think the modifications on this guy, just some weathering of the coat and the clothes and the guns, and then just sort of a matte spray over the head and hands, works great. And then of course you've got simple modifications on this guy. Just use some Tamiya clear red and orange to paint that neck a little bit more. I also weathered the jacket, and I weathered the shoes and the trousers, and matte coated the skull, and that was it. Honestly, they were okay out of the box and improved by me with just a few simple mods here and there, and now I'm not that embarrassed to have them in the collection. And honestly, because the Hellboy, the original Hot Toy Hellboy, it's unavailable. You just can't get that thing for love nor money. It costs a bomb, and the thing is falling apart. All the pleather trousers are breaking apart. The silicone body is splitting. Those things are not going to last the test of time. So these sort of KO is a nice one in the collection to have. And once this splits apart and breaks up and gets destroyed, you're not going to cry because you haven't spent £300, £400, £500 on it. Same with this guy. I do have the DX11 original, so Hot Toys have got my money there. but also at the same time I was able to mess about with this, modify it and get it into a slightly different look for the guy. And also I'm quite confident to have him sit down and confidently have his arms folded without causing too much damage to the clothing. Therefore, if it does break, if it is damaged, if I do have to throw it away, I'm not going to be too upset. And the same with Ghost Rider. If that breaks up and destroys and that pleather cracks up and everything, nah, okay, it'll go in the bin, but it still looks pretty nice on the shelf as is. And also, in a pinch, if I had to choose a fourth selection for my favourites, this guy would be it. But it took a lot of work. There was a hell of a lot of modifying going on. There's not much of the figure left, so I didn't really want to count him as 3 of the best figures in the collection from Legend Creations, simply because there was just too much work involved and there's not enough of him to say that this was actually a good shout to spend your money on. But if you want to get something to customize and, you know, destroy and rip apart, this could potentially be a good option for you, but not as an actual whole figure to proudly stand in your display. Okay guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed my tour through my not so secret shameful figures. If you could do me a favour, if you could hit the like button and subscribe, that would be a great help. And if you could just do me a favour now, if you can get the fuck out of my cave, I've got another very interesting Legend Creations figure on the way. And yeah, I'm very curious to see how that turns out. Bye bye guys.